Pork tenderloin is one of those meats that can be cooked in so many different ways. Today we're going to stuff it, roll it, and roast it. And then we're going to make a beautiful jus, or sauce, to go with it. We're making herbed goat's cheese stuffed prosciutto crusted pork tenderloin. Hey guys, if this is your first time tuning in, let us know you're out there by giving us a thumbs up below and then hit that subscribe button over here in the left corner to make sure you never miss a video. Now let's start cooking. So let's take a look at our ingredients. First, of course, we have our pork tenderloin. And I'm gonna show you today, a lot of times you get a pork tenderloin and most of the time it's got this little tail on it. And people are always wondering, what do I do with that? So I'll show you what to do with that. So we've got our pork tenderloin and we've got a goat's cheese. And this is a highly prized French goat's cheese. It is a non-pasteurized goat's milk cheese from the town of Valençay in the region of Berry in the center part of France. And this is a goat's cheese that is really tasty. It's aged anywhere usually from 3 to 5 weeks, but it just has a very earthy taste as well as citrusy. So it works really well with pork. So we're going to stuff our pork with this goat's cheese, which is going to be infused with some fresh herbs. And so what I've chosen today for herbs is I've got some sage. This is all fresh from the garden. And so with pork, you always have to have a little sage. Got a little bit of oregano, got some thyme, and a little bit of rosemary. Kind of, provincial type herbs along with a little sage. And then we're going to season it, and you can season your pork however you want. Salt and pepper is fine. I like to add a little bit of extra kick to it, so I've got salt and pepper with a little bit of garlic powder, as well as a spice called espelette, which is similar to a cayenne pepper in the States, although it's not as hot, but it has the same kind of a flavor as like a cayenne. So that's called espelette pepper. And then we're going to roll this pork in some prosciutto. And part of our seasoning will include some olive oil, and this is a flavoring element, so we're using an extra virgin olive oil for that. And those are our ingredients for our pork. All right, taking a look at the ingredients for our jus, or a sauce, and the difference between a jus and a sauce. A jus is really more of almost like a broth as a result of cooking a meat. But I mentioned on the pork tenderloin, that extra little piece there, what we're going to do with that is we are going to pan sear that, and then from those wonderful leftovers in the pan, we are then going to add a mirepoix. We're going to saute those slowly, just really sweat those vegetables. Then we're going to deglaze the pan with a little bit of Calvados. And Calvados is an apple brandy. And of course, apple and pork is a great pairing, so that'll be a great base for our sauce. And then we'll add a little bit of chicken stock over the top of that, and a bouquet garni with some of the same herbs that we're using in the pork. And that will be for our jus. Our first step to preparing our pork is this little tail that you often get with a pork tenderloin. We are actually just going to trim that maybe about right there. And I'm actually going to cut that into small pieces. And this is actually going to be the base of our pork jus. And now a lot of times, especially here in France, when you get meat from the store, it's been really finely trimmed. And this has been pretty finely trimmed, but I'm just going to take a little bit of this away so I can get to this fat layer and trim just a little bit of that out. And it's really a sinewy layer, so I'm just going to put that in there with our trimmings, as well as a little bit of this side as well. This will be something that is not that tender when it comes to actually chewing your pork. So we're just going to remove some of that, if I can get under it. Here we go. We'll use this in our sauce to get our flavor, and then of course it'll be strained out, but we'll still get that great flavor from it. And you don't have to completely trim this out, but your guests will thank you later if you go ahead and trim this from the pork. Okay, so we got that part done, and we'll reserve that over here. Now the next thing that we want to do is we're going to slice this right down the center. And you want to be careful when you're doing this not to go all the way through. We're just taking and that's why it's helpful to have a really sharp knife. So we're going gently down through the pork. So we've got it in half. And now what we're going to do is we're going to butterfly both halves. So we'll take this half and come using your knife kind of at an oblong direction like that. Same thing on the other side. And being careful again not to go all the way through the pork. Okay, so got that done. Now what we're going to do is we want to even this out a little bit. So we'll just take a little bit of plastic wrap, and we're going to use our tamper. We've got two different sides to it. One is just a flat side, and one is we've got spikes on it to help tenderize and break things down. So we'll start out with that piece, that side. And we're just trying to make sure that it's even all over. Okay, that's pretty good. Okay, now that we've done that, let's actually put our pork in our container here. Get that out of the way. And now we're going to season our pork first. And again, like I said, we're going to use the good olive oil, or extra virgin olive oil, and a little bit of our spice mix. And when you're seasoning, you want to season from high above so that your everything gets distributed evenly. So that's going to be nice and well seasoned. And we'll do the same thing on the other side. Our next step will be our goat's cheese. Okay, on to our herbs. So we've got, like I said, we've got oregano, some rosemary, some thyme, and some fresh sage. So to prepare these, for these woody herbs that have leaves on them, it's really easiest just to take them and strip them just like that. And all the leaves can come off just in one little fell swoop. And the same thing with the thyme. And it's not going to kill anybody if you get a little bit of stem in there, especially on thyme, because it's very fine anyhow. But that's the way we want to do that. And just one more little bit of thyme. And just make sure you're kind of going against the grain when you're stripping these. And one more. All right. So we've got our sage, and really probably the easiest thing to do with sage is just roll the leaves up like that, and we'll just come straight down the sage just like this. Do kind of a little, what's called a chiffonade. Okay, and just one more little chop around like that. That's good to go. And now for our other herbs that we already pulled off, we can just chop those as well. And we don't have to go extremely fine, but we don't want anyone getting a large bite of any particular one. So, very good. So now we'll just mix those in with our goat's cheese. So let's chat for just a second about this goat's cheese. This is, like I said, it's a highly priced cheese from Valençay in France. And this is a soft goat's cheese. It's very creamy on the inside, and the rind is edible. You know, a lot of people, a lot of times are afraid of the rind, but I'm telling you what, if you taste this, it is just absolutely delicious. It's got a little bit of a seasoning to it. Rind is usually made from a dusting of charcoal on the outside of the cheese, and it just gives a great flavor. So this Valençay usually comes in, I think, 220 gram size. We've used about a half of it here for our dish today. So we've got our cheese here, and now we're just going to sprinkle our herbs in there. And we just simply move those around a little bit, and that's all there is to that. Now to this, you can, and I often do this, if you wanted to add some arugula, some rocket, you know, some spinach, anything like that, you could just gently sear that and add it to this as well. So it would make a great seasoning as well for this stuffing. But that'll be our stuffing. Okay, all our prep is done. All we need to do now is stuff our pork. So let's do that. We've got our cheese that's been filled with herbs, and so I like to just put it right in the center. You could certainly put this in a piping bag and try piping it out, but it's probably just as easy to just put it right down on the center of your pork. Okay. All right, so now what we'll do is we'll take our pork off. So basically, you want to lay your prosciutto out side by side until it is about the width of your tenderloin. And we have kind of a small tenderloin. We're going to overlap these a little bit as we lay them out. Once we have everything of the pork stuffed, we're now just going to make it, roll it up into a nice little roll. And that roll we will then put right on top of our prosciutto. And we'll just take this right over here. And we will, I like to roll this with the seam down. So we'll put the seam right down on the end there. And now I'm gonna roll this to where this open part of the pork, I'm just gonna roll that toward me, starting from one end and making sure you keep your overlap. And now we'll just roll the entire thing towards me, just like that. Okay, that is stuffed. Now we've got our pork stuffed and we've rolled it in our prosciutto, it's time to tie it up. So we're just going to use some kitchen string, and I usually like to take about a piece of string that's about probably 4 or 5 times the length of your pork. And always better to err on the long side so you don't have to start over. Okay, so we'll start at one end, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a little bit of a knot here. Right there. And I like to come back underneath the pork, make another little loop around the pork, and now we're going to go to the very end and we're just going to slide this down, and we'll just start looping it through what we've already wound. All right, so there's one. And it doesn't have to be extremely tight, but you just want to make sure that your wrapping stays on it. If we were using individual slices of bacon, We might want to do it a little bit closer, but in this case we've got these larger pieces of prosciutto, and this should be just fine. All right, and our very last one, and we'll come back underneath the end, and I'll wrap it around again, and we'll just tie that off. And just cut it, and we are ready to go. And now it is actually time to go ahead and preheat your oven to 220 centigrade or 425 Fahrenheit, and we'll move to the next step. Okay, our pork is stuffed and it's wrapped, and we've got it tied up. Now we're just going to sear it off. So we've got a pan already heating, and so I'm just going to put in, and again now we're using just some grapeseed oil because we just want to sear our pork here. So we've got that, and by the way, I'm using this pan, which is a very heavy bottom stainless steel pan, which is also oven proof. So we're going to use this to not only sear our pork, but also to roast it in the oven. You could also use if you have a cast iron skillet that you love, you can certainly use that as well. So, all right, in with our pork, and we should get a really nice sizzle. All right, our pork is sizzling away, and we just let it sit there, and we just want to get it nice and brown on all sides. Not too much on one particular side, but you see that nice caramelization we've got there. And that is just building up our flavor. Our pork is ready to put in the oven. So what we're going to do is I'm going to insert our kitchen thermometer, and this is one that you can actually put in the oven. So we're just going to put that right in the center of the pork, and we're going to cook this pork to 63 degrees centigrade. Now, pork is done between about 145 Fahrenheit and 63 centigrade. That's on the low end. So what I'm going to do is I've set my timer to go off, or I've set my alarm to go off when the pork is 63 internal temperature, but that will then take it up to the 66 or 68 degrees that I want it to be. So it's safe at 145, but that's on the more rare side. Anywhere from 145 Fahrenheit to 160 Fahrenheit is good for pork. I prefer probably the 150, 156 range Fahrenheit, or the 66 to 68 range centigrade. So we've got our pork in there, and this alarm will go off when it reaches 63 degrees centigrade. And the reason we do that is because it will continue to cook once you remove it from the oven. So it's probably going to go up another 6-8 degrees once you take it out. So if you cook your pork to 160 degrees Fahrenheit, then it's going to be overcooked, and it's going to be tough when you get ready to serve it, because it's going to sit for at least 10 minutes after you take it out of the oven, and will continue to cook. Now comes the part that I'm most excited about, and that is our jus. So these are the trimmings of the pork that we cut earlier. And you know, if you've got a piece of pork tenderloin that you know, doesn't have that little tail on it, and you don't want to use any trimmings from it, you can certainly go and get an inexpensive piece of pork chop or anything like that that will work. So so we've put down a little bit of grapeseed oil, and now we are just going to sear this meat until it's nice and brown all over. And that won't take very long. Okay, we've got our pork searing, and as you can see, it's leaving a nice little residue in the pan. And that is the most important part of this process. You see that? That's called SUCS, S-U-C-S. And this is the result of what's called the Maillard effect when protein starts to cook. And so it gets stuck to the bottom of the pan, and that's where a lot of the flavor is. So now we're going to remove our pork from the pan. And we'll actually drain some of the oil. We've removed our pork, and now we're just going to add a little, probably about a half a tablespoon of butter to our pan, because now we are going to sweat our mirepoix. And again, our mirepoix is onions, carrots, celery, and I've actually got a whole garlic clove here. So we're going to sweat those. In other words, we're going to cook those until they're soft and translucent to get those going. Our vegetables are nice and soft, and so now what we'll do, and just want to make sure that I didn't go by the last step too quickly. You want to make sure and drain the excess oil out of the pan before you add your butter and your vegetables. That's a very important step so that your sauce is not oily. So now what we'll do is we'll add our meat back into the pan and get that all mixed in. And we're on about a medium heat at this point. Get that meat added back in. And now our next step is kind of a fun one. So we've got this Calvados, which is an apple brandy, and we are actually going to deglaze our pan with the Calvados. So we're actually going to take it off of the heat. This is a safe way to do this, and we're just going to flame it. And what this flaming does, of course, is burns the alcohol off. But it also imparts great flavor to our dish. So we'll just let that go. And I probably added really only about a quarter cup of the Calvados. So that'll burn itself out. And once that burns itself out, we'll continue with our next step. As you can see, our flame has died down, Calvados is burned off, and I'm not sure if you can see the bottom of this pan now, but it's really thickened up a little bit. So that's why, that's another advantage of using this alcohol to deglaze the pan. So now what we'll do is we'll cover this with some chicken stock. And we're going to bring our heat up, we're going to bring it to a boil. And we'll add in our bouquet garni. And again, our bouquet garni, I think we had some rosemary, some thyme, and some oregano in there. And we've just wrapped that in a leek leaf, a little bit of a green piece of leek, and then just tied it up. And we're going to put that in there. That's going to be our flavoring element, or extra flavoring element, with the same herbs that we put in the pork. So we're going to bring that to the boil. Once it comes to the boil, we're going to turn it down and we'll let it simmer 20-25 minutes. Sounds like our timer is going off, and it really only took that pork 12 minutes or so to get up to the temperature that we want. So now we will remove our pork. And again, if you don't have one of these thermometers that you could actually put in the oven like this, you can always use an instant read thermometer that you could just put inside of your pork and test it. But this is very accurate. And by the way, be careful when you take the meat from the oven. It's going to be quite hot, as will the thermometer. know, it just doesn't take very long at all to cook because we've pounded the pork to a pretty thin thickness, and it just cooks it quite quickly. So now we'll take that out and we'll just let it rest at least 10 minutes or so. By the way, just as a tip, if you have a pan like this that you've had in the oven and then you take it off and you take it out of the stove, just do something to remind yourself that the handle is hot so you don't grab it. Believe me, you do it once, you'll never forget it. But the best thing to do is just put a piece of paper towel, kitchen towel or something like that in the handle, and so when you get ready to reach for that, you'll realize that that's hot and you won't grab it. Our sauce has come to the boil, and now we've turned it down to a simmer. And so what we want to do now is any impurities that are coming up to the top, we just want to take a ladle and skim those impurities, just like if you're making a chicken stock, which basically is what this is. You want to skim anything that comes to the top that might be extra fat or something else that you don't want. So skim that, discard it, and then wipe your spoon in some clean cold water. Just keep your spoon rinsed off. And we're also going to make sure that we go around the inside now of our pan so that we don't have anything getting stuck to the side and burning. That's going to first of all discolor our sauce and also change the flavor of it. So again, we'll let that go now for probably another 15 minutes and it'll be ready to go. Our sauce is at the next point, and so basically when you put the liquid into your stock, you want to cook that and reduce it about a third. So we've cooked it now for about 20 minutes and it's reduced by about a third, and now it's time to strain our stock, and we'll just do that into a smaller saucepan. And whenever you do that, just make sure you use a ladle to get the rest of your flavor out of your chinois. And by the way, I don't know if I've talked too much about this chinois, but it is definitely worth investing in one that is a high quality. This is a fine mesh chinois strainer, and but it's also very, very strong. So you can press down on things, and it's got the little supports at the bottom that you can use. So works very well. So our sauce has now been strained, and what we'll do now is we will put this back on a little bit of heat, and probably don't need as big a flame as we had. And we're just going to bring this to a simmer and maybe let it reduce just a little bit. Then we'll season it with whatever we want, just a little salt and pepper, and maybe a little pat of butter if you like. And again, this is a jus, so we're not looking for a really thick sauce. We're looking for, it's kind of a jus like you would use for a piece of roast beef. So we'll let that come up to a nice simmer, and we'll taste it and season it and be done with it. Our sauce has been simmering probably about 10 minutes or so, and so now we can taste it for seasoning and see where we are. Okay, it's really wonderful flavor, but we're going to add just a touch of salt to it. A little bit of salt, maybe a little bit of pepper, not a whole lot, and just a pat of butter to finish it off. Beautiful consistency, and it's definitely ready. So we'll finish our dish and we'll see what it tastes like. Our meat has rested, and it is time for the moment of truth. And of course, the first thing we want to do is remove the string. So we'll just come over here to where the knot is. And if I've done it right, we should be able to remove this string in one fell swoop. Or maybe two fell swoops. Holding together quite nicely. Okay. So let's dig in and give her a slice. Very nice. Beautiful. Nice and succulent. Look how juicy that is. And you see a little bit of your stuffing there. Let's give it a taste. Let's put a little bit of our sauce over our meat. Oh, look at that. Oh, very nice. And one thing I didn't say about sauce is that when you're making a sauce like this, if you notice that it's a little heavy feeling, not quite light and bright enough, you can always add a nice squeeze of lemon juice, and that can help to really brighten up a sauce. So, of course, I'm partial to the end piece. We'll give that a shot. Oh, such a simple piece of meat with so much flavor, and the sauce just adds an extra little bit of touch. So this is a great one to serve with some mashed sweet potatoes, a sweet potato puree, some asparagus, what have you. Enjoy. If you enjoyed this video and you'd like to see more, give us a thumbs up below and hit that subscribe button. It's free. And ring the bell if you want to be notified as soon as we release a new video. Also, let us know in the comments if you have any special recipe requests. We really appreciate you tuning in. See you next time.